Hey guys! With the countdown to the 5th anniversary event that came up very recently, we also had two banners that came up that obviously, because it's part of the GL countdown to anniversary, I did not cover these banners in my pool plan video, so I decided to just make a separate video right here to cover my thoughts and opinions on these two banners. Both banners feature only two characters each, and both characters will have their LD, FR, BT and EX weapons, essentially all the weapons available on the same banner. Do take note though that even though there's only two characters instead of the usual three, the chances of getting a specific FR or LD or BT weapon still remains the same. I guess the only difference though is that since of course there are two BTs and two FR weapons, if you are just aiming to get any FR or any BT weapon, then technically the odds are double. Additionally, the weapons across all four characters on the two banners are not new weapons. All of them are rerun. Sherlotta, Kamlanaut, Lunafreya and Kain, FR, BT, LDs have been released before, so this is technically just a re-release. The characters also do not get any rework on this banner, so their strength remains the same as with their last release. With that said, let's head into the banners. The first banner features Sherlotta and Kamlanaut. Sherlotta, till this day, still remains a very strong support character which specializes on brave gains. She carries practically anything and everything related to brave gains, and this includes increasing the brave gains that you get, allowing you to brave gain for every brave hit that you do, very similar to the Kate Sif LD call effect. And she also allows you to brave gain at the end of your attack based on the amount of HP damage that you have done. Take note though that to access a large part of her support kit, you do need access to her BT and her BT aura. Because she provides quite a lot of boost in brave gains, in fact while she's in your party and her BT aura is up, you can more or less just expect that your brave is always going to remain at cap. This means that she actually shines in elemental lockout stages because it doesn't matter how much brave damage that you do, even if your entire party is hitting for once, Sherlotta in the party will always ensure that you will be getting capped brave when you dump your brave into an HP attack. Her FR is kinda dated. Her FR would fit her kit very nicely because a large part of the bonus comes from using a modified brave or HP attack. She can fulfill this and still deal, I guess, somewhat decent damage by going into her force time and then going into her BT mode and using 6 chuck staffs in a row. And if you give her a Paladin Cecile or a Lily set Refined Sphere, her chuck staff will also battery the party and will fulfill her other force conditional, allowing her to have a plus 65% per turn when using chuck staff. That being said though, plus 65% in this day and age isn't terribly exciting, and because one of the biggest force conditionals for her is to use a modified brave or HP attack, not many characters would have that, or at the very least would have a modified brave or HP attack that you actually want to press during force time. Moving on to Kamlanaut. Kamlanaut in my mind plays a utility role in your party. Most of the time, if you are considering to bring Kamlanaut to the party, you'll probably be considering him on the merits of his ability to disable the enemies. His BT aura has a somewhat unique effect whereby as long as it's up, anytime any party member attacks the enemy, the attack will also land a one-turn framed debuff that is essentially a framed paralysis. This means that as long as Kamlanaut BT aura is up, most of the time the enemies will be disabled during their turns. Kamlanaut was also one of the first few FRs released in the Shinryu era, and in case you're not aware, back in the day, his FR was absolutely broken. One of his FR conditional is that you get a plus 20% anytime you attack a disabled enemy. And the thing about how his FR works is that it also counts in attacks that happen during launch or knockback. So for example, if Kamlanaut himself attacks a disabled enemy, you get plus 20%. If that attacks initiate a launch and two other characters participate in the launch, you get plus 20% per character as well. This means that altogether with 3 party members doing a full launch, that's plus 60%. And his FR also has one additional conditional that gives you another plus 20% if you use an ice attack. Which means that as long as you can do a full launch in Kamlanaut's force time, you can hit as high as plus 80% a turn. Back in the day, plus 80% was considered absolutely bonkers because at that point in time, the average increase per turn is roughly about 40 to 50%. So this increase is about double of what any other FR in that era could provide, making him absolutely broken for his time. Today though, at the time of making of this video, plus 80% I guess is still pretty good, but it's no longer far above and beyond all other FRs. You can have FRs that provide 80 to 100% and sometimes even higher depending on the character. So 80% a turn isn't anything special anymore, and the fact that it requires you to have a disabled enemy and have a full launch every single turn is somewhat restrictive in terms of setup. Overall, if I were to assign a rating on this banner, I would probably rate it sort of around a 3 or 4 out of 10. And in my mind, the only character out of the 2 that's driving the rating is actually Sherlotta. If this banner came up earlier or much earlier during the Elemental Lockout era, then I may actually assign her a higher rating. But in this current point in time, we are actually sort of about to exit the Elemental Lockout. Not to mention, the other banner features another support character in the form of Lunafreya, and it's actually hard for me to recommend Sherlotta when if you really need a support, you can actually pull for Lunafreya instead. Now, big disclaimer here, I'm not saying that they do the same thing. I'm saying that if you just want one support character to fulfill our roster, then Lunafreya is also available at the same time as well. Kamlanaut, unfortunately to me, doesn't really contribute to the rating. At this point in time, it's actually very difficult to justify pulling and spending resources for him. His force conditional or force bonus increase is no longer anything special, and the requirement of having him in the party means that you can't dedicate the party slot to someone else instead. And since he doesn't actually get a rework on this event, his damage is kind of subpar, and having the additional utility to disable enemies really, I think, isn't enough to make up for his shortcomings. The second banner features Lunafreya and Kain. Lunafreya functions as a support and utility character. She does provide very decent party auras in her support, and she also carries party Ice Enchant and Ice Imperil as well. But what's extremely powerful and unique to her is her prayer ability. Lunafreya has the ability to grant herself and her allies 2 different types of prayer in the form of buffs. The first is Heavy Prayer. Heavy Prayer buff allows you to deal additional 10%, I believe, HP damage per every HP dump that you do. And this HP damage is sort of considered an additional type of damage, in a way very similar to General Leo LD call ability if you have that already. While that bonus damage isn't affected by force time bonus, it is still somewhat nice to deal that extra bit of damage for every attack that you do. What is absolutely broken though is her other prayer, which is the Quick Prayer buff. Now in my mind and my opinion, Quick Prayer is probably the most powerful and the most broken buff in the entire game out of all characters. The sheer utility it provides is absolutely bonkers. While you are buffed with Quick Prayer, your actions will not contribute to the turn count, and you will also get an instant turn right after you take your action. This is extremely relevant in the Shinryu era because typically what you want to do most of the time, is to enter force time and then enter into a BT mode with your main DPS character so that you can maximize the amount of damage per turn during your force time. Most capable and strong DPS characters usually also carry force abilities or force attacks that will do well for themselves. For example, Tifa or Rinoa or Sid Reigns or Jack Garland, all of them have force conditionals that they themselves will have no issue to fulfill. The problem though, of course, is that when you use a character's force attack, you would normally end their turn and you'd have to waste 2 or maybe 3 player turns before the DPS character gets a turn again, by which time the force time will be at 7 turns or so. You can bypass this while you have quick prayer. Because quick prayer gives you an instant turn again, you can do something like going into force time with your character, getting an instant turn, going into BT plus with that same character, getting another instant turn, and then going into a big fat juicy BT mode with your main DPS character. The quick prayer buff also helps one of the most current broken combos in the game, which is the Hope and Anna Crow combo. You do need quick prayer up on Anna Crow for it to work because Anna Crow LD is normally a low turn rate attack, meaning that it pushes a turn far back, but you get around this problem again by buffing her with quick prayer. I really cannot understate how good quick prayer is. I've used Lunafreya in almost every single event in the game. Yes, it is possible to of course complete events without her, but she really opens up a lot of utility and flexibility for your party and allows you to really maximize the potential of force time as well. At the very least, I would highly recommend to get her LD because it is her LD that gives you access to her prayers. Getting access to her LD would also mean that you will then have access to her LD call ability, and her LD call ability is also a one-time use that will allow you to buff prayers on your party. Her BT though is also quite good because while her BT aura is up, it extends all the buffs that she can grant by 1 additional turn, which means that her prayer will last 1 turn longer as well. Whether or not that will be enough reason for you to pull for her BT is really up to you. I think a lot of it also depends of course on how many spare BT ingots that you have lying about. Not forgetting of course that the 5th anniversary event is coming up very soon, and at this point in time we still do not know what is the GL exclusive that will come up, so you may want to at least save a few BT ingots for that character. If you do have ingots to spare though, I would recommend to try to pick up her BT as well. Her BT and her LD goes very well together. Her FR is a bit more optional. That doesn't mean that it has no value. Having her FR would sometimes allow you to consider going into one force time with Lunafreya and then using her to charge up the meter for another character. That being said, of course, between her 3 key weapons, I think the most important would be her LD, followed by her BT weapon. Coming to Kain, Kain functions primarily as a often DPS character with an access to BT and BT aura. Kain was the very first force weapon character that was released in the Shinryu era, and despite that, he's still being used up till today. I've even used him very recently as well, and he's still probably going to be very usable, very usable in the near foreseeable future as well. Now why is that? He's actually one of the best off-turn damage dealers in the game, primarily because his lancets will trigger after any field action, which means that any action that you take, any action that the boss will take, will trigger lancets, even if the action doesn't actually deal any damage to the boss. So if you use, for example, additional abilities or call abilities, it also triggers lancets as well. The ease of triggering lancets combined to the fact that it also gets multiplied by force time bonus makes him a very attractive option. Not to mention, of course, that due to the way the jump mechanic works, while he's in the air, he gets 100% evasion, and very importantly, his turn gets pushed back significantly while he's in the air. This, in practice, allows you to give Kain or allow Kain to hold a very short duration call ability. For example, General Leo or Kate Sith, which typically only lasts 2 or 3 turns. But because Kain jumping into the air will push his turn back significantly, you can hold on to the call blessing far longer than you normally would be able to otherwise. His force weapon though is absolutely terrible. I would recommend not chasing after his force weapon, just forget about it and aim for any other force weapon that you want. Personally, I wouldn't rate him as broken as Lunafreya, because Lunafreya Quick Prayer is very unique in the game. No other character comes close in providing the same thing that she does. Whereas for Kain, there are of course other options for often damage dealers. So if you feel pretty comfortable with your often damage dealers, then I think he's a bit more optional. But altogether, he's still one of the best in terms of what he does, and him being on the same banner as Lunafreya makes this banner extremely attractive. And if you don't have both of these characters, I strongly recommend to consider spending your resources on this particular banner. Overall, there's no need to assign a rating on this banner. It has Lunafreya, and Lunafreya on any banner is, in my mind, worth pulling for. Heck, even if the banner is Lunafreya and Tancred and Irvine, I would still recommend pulling if you don't have Lunafreya, just based on the virtue of how powerful she is in the meta. And like I said, if you are tight on budget or tight on resources, at the very least, I would recommend to pull for her LD. That gives you access to about 60 or 70% of her kit. It's true that without her BT, you can't get access to the full duration of her prayers, but having 2 turn quick prayer is better than having no quick prayer at all. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this video. As always, I hope the video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!